Hello, everybody. Welcome to my channel. My name is Paul, the Canadian Snowman, bringing you once again Vikings. Well, actually, this isn't really Vikings. We kind of finished that up last episode. This is kind of like the fallout of it. Last episode, basically the last of the Vikings lost their battle and basically got pushed out of England. Pretty much, right? I mean, England won the battle, and that was kind of the last, like, the remnants of the Vikings, pretty much, right? Which makes sense because this title of this video does not have Vikings in it whatsoever. I'll still put this in the end of the playlist just for the fallout, but this is almost kind of like a standalone episode, but it really is the continuation of the series. It just has no Vikings in it. So it's really not a Viking episode, right? But this is pretty much, I think this is it France or who is it? On the other side, England still has some they're not home free yet. Is it William? Coming from basically France, I think so. It might not be France yet. Is coming to kind of make his claim, I think, in this video. And that's kind of the war, or the Battle of Hastings, 1066. So, I think this battle is going to kind of, solidify, I guess, England, as being a power kind of thing. This last kind of enemy, at least for now, who's kind of threatening the throne, I guess, right? But anyways, this should be pretty interesting. This is the last of of this series. I know it's not. I'm going to put it in as part of the Viking series, but I guess it really is not. But this is going to be the end of this series, and then I'll be on to something else tomorrow. But anyways, guys, I'm looking forward to seeing how this basically close out and see what happens here. So anyways, guys, please hit that like and subscribe below, please, and thank you. And we're going to get on with the show. Hope you guys are having an amazing day and all this fun stuff. Here we go. Kings and Generals, once again, amazing channel. We'll be doing more from them in the future. And in 3, 2, 1, bam.
Previously in our mini-series on the year 1066, we have covered the invasion of England by the King of Norway, Harald Hardrada, who was able to defeat the northern English earls, Morcar and Edwin, at Fulford, but then was counterattacked by the King, Harold II, at the Battle of Stamford Bridge, defeated and killed.
Throughout that series, I was kind of confused last episode because it was like Harold versus Harold, and it kept going back and forth between the Harold, and one's Harold II, and the other one's just Harold. Did that confuse anybody else kind of last episode? So, anyways.
Harold II at the Battle of Stamford Bridge, defeated and killed. Unfortunately for Harold, his kingdom was simultaneously under attack from the Norman Duke William. In this video, we will cover this campaign and the pivotal Battle of Hastings. Fun fact about us, we love tennis. So the good news is that this video was sponsored. This clash has a great field in different arenas.
Alright.
Beware of our forehand. Just as it seemed as though Harold Godwinson's reign was secure, affairs in the south turned critical. Since discovering that the crown he considered his had been so unjustly stolen away.
Okay, so it's not France. I'm sorry, it's Normandy. Alright. So Normandy ends up becoming part of France, right? Alright, so you got Normandy trying to take the throne here, I guess, right? Alright. Right, okay.
William of Normandy had been an incredibly busy man. The Duke oversaw the construction of an invasion fleet, while his army was not only made up of the Normans, but large quantities of mercenaries from other French baronies, Aragon, Hungary, Germany, and even as far as Norman Apulia. All in all, 10,000 eager men gathered at Dives throughout August 1066. After sailing 120 miles northeast from Dives to Saint-Valery, William finally launched his seaborne assault at nightfall on September 27th, 2 days after the Anglo-Saxon triumph at Stamford Bridge.
Wow. Right after.
Duke William's army landed at undefended Pevensey Bay the next morning. Treading carefully at first, the Duke ordered his ships anchored together, conducted extensive reconnaissance, and expanded an old Roman fortification near Pevensey. But William grew bolder with time and sent a force of his knights to demand the surrender of nearby Hastings. The locals could have raised a force of 1,200, but chose not to, surrendering the city. In York, Harold Godwinson was still celebrating and resting the army when he was informed of this disconcerting surprise attack on September 29th. Not overly concerned and confident in his chances, the king gathered his elite Huscarls, sent off orders to his brother Leofwin for an assembly of troops in London, and then sped back south as swiftly as he'd come north, arriving in his capital by October 6th. Informed of Harold's triumph against the Norwegians and his imminent presence, William sensed an opening he could exploit. The Duke began torching the estates of Harold and his vassals in Sussex to force the king into an unwise clash. To further decrease Harold's reputation, the Normans also concocted propaganda that Godwinson had personally decapitated his brother's corpse after the fratricide at Stamford Bridge. All this forced Harold to hastily leave London on October 11th, with by what all accounts was a motley army, compared to the force he could have mustered given a few more days of waiting. Its core...
Actually, honestly, I have no clue who wins this. Like, who takes over England? I don't know. So this is definitely... At first I was like, okay, it's going to be Harold, right? But it's like, why would it be Harold? It could easily, be William, so... Interesting.
To the force he could have mustered given a few more days of waiting. Its core was the veteran Huscarl elites that had fought at Stamford Bridge, supplemented by thanes recruited in London, as well as feudsmen from Oxfordshire, Kent, and other parts of southern England. After marching around 50 miles to the south, through England's great Andredsweald forest, Harold Godwinson reached a vantage point on Culbeck Hill. On its summit was a greyish apple tree, which had been agreed as the meeting point for Saxon forces arriving late. Moreover, as the point was located nearby a fork in the Roman road from Hastings, William's army would have to pass by if it was to move beyond the Pevensey beachhead. Soon after arriving at the hill, Harold's forces were detected by a group of Norman outriders, who swiftly went back to Hastings and informed their duke of the enemy presence only about 8 miles away. Itching for a chance to meet the Saxon king on the open field, but still remaining careful, William recalled all of his foragers and had the entire camp stand at arms all night, just in case Harold attempted another Stamford Bridge, while the Anglo-Saxons rested after a tiresome march. At daybreak, a Norman reconnaissance vanguard spotted the various banners of Harold's army flying atop Culbeck Hill. Behind them, they witnessed part of the English army still streaming out of the Andredsweald to unite with their king. Realizing that Harold still wasn't really ready for a fight, the scouts reported the news back to their duke. By the time Norman units started approaching Telham Hill, both rulers were aware of the other's presence. Atop the slope, William and his troops stopped to don their armor and take a rest before the clash began. Harold drew up his 8,000 troops on the top of a ridge which cut across the path of the Roman road. His centre mostly consisted of 1,000 or so heavily armed, solidly armoured and highly trained Huscarls, supported by 6,500 Fyrd militia spread between both left and right flanks. To shore up the strength of these weaker troops, the king interspersed smaller units of Huscarls amongst them. The remaining 500 were drawn from the county militias of Kent and Sussex. All of these soldiers formed a defensive shield wall at the command of their king, who positioned himself behind the centre. It was clear to both commanders that the area's density of vegetation and wooded nature would render any flank attack useless, so William sent his ranged units, archers and crossbowmen, forward in an attempt to prevent Harold seizing the ridge. Although these skilled marksmen spooked the inexperienced English fyrdmen and prompted a few defections, they failed to prevent their enemy's line forming. Descending from Telham Hill, William's 7,500-strong army fanned out at the bottom of the slope and drew up opposite and below the well-positioned Anglo-Saxon force. This 7,500 was made up of 4,000 heavy infantry, 1,500 missile troops, and 2,000 heavy Norman knights. It was now about 8 in the morning. The largest non-Norman contingent, the Bretons under Alan Rufus, wheeled left and took up position on the western end of the valley floor. The Duke of Normandy himself, along with his friends, companions and hardened Norman troops, manned the centre. To their eastern flank was William's smallest division, comprising retinues from Flanders, Picardy and other regions. Each of these 3 divisions was deployed with archers and crossbowmen in the first line, mail-clad footmen in the second.
Yeah, so we're basically going to get like a straight-up battle right here. Like, there's going to be no surprise attacks or like, I don't know, basically they're all kind of evenly, how it looks like an open field in the middle. Like no one's like has to guard a bridge or anything like that. So, and apparently with the numbers, they're pretty evenly matched up by the numbers. So it just looks like it basically who's going to have the better tactics here, who's going to be able to exploit their enemy's weakness at the right time or something. So, because right now it's up in the air who's going to win this right now. So this is pretty cool.
With archers and crossbowmen in the first line, mail-clad footmen in the second, and mounted knights in the third. Approaching 9 AM, some writers describe how a minstrel known as Taillefer rode in front of Duke William and regaled him with the Song of Roland, an epic poem of the eponymous Frankish hero. When this enigmatic troubadour-like adventurer was then granted permission to strike the first blow against the English enemy, Taillefer galloped towards the Anglo-Saxon army, killed 2 of the men who came out to face him, and was then slain in turn. Then at roughly 9 AM on October 13th, a deafening cacophony of Norman war trumpets sounded from William's battle line, and in their wake...
I mean, that guy had to have some confidence, man. Like, I guess he was going to die for, like, basically his leader, his king. I want to be the first one to die and go in there and take a couple of guys with him. And, yeah, wow. You go, dude, man. Go for what you believe in, man.
A cacophony of Norman war trumpets sounded from William's battle line, and in their wake came the day's very first attack. 1,500 archers and crossbowmen advanced to the foot of Harold's Ridge, and let loose a storm of projectiles directly at the Anglo-Saxon line. This uphill volley failed to have any significant impact, and the skirmishers' missiles either harmlessly struck hostile shields or flew far over their targets' heads. With Harold Godwinson's tightly packed English army virtually untouched by the bombardment, William's heavy foot began ascending the Senlac Ridge slowly, beset throughout the entire climb by a constant barrage of javelins, Danish throwing hatchets, stones, and even planks.
I'm just kind of wondering why William would just go up the slope. I mean, I think, wouldn't he want to have, like, better terrain to fight him against instead of going up a hill? Like, why doesn't he wait back there? I guess because he doesn't have the luxury of waiting because he's in a foreign land. It's not his land. So he kind of has to go in initiative, I'm guessing. But, yeah, definitely, in these situations, I always wonder, like, why don't you just wait him out, wait for him to come down the hill and meet him straight up? Because now he's at a big disadvantage.
Thanks. Constant barrage of javelins, Danish throwing hatchets, stones, and even planks of wood.
Yeah.
Upon reaching melee range, the first Norman line was stabbed and cleaved asunder in its dozens of men, but nevertheless grimly pushed on. Throughout the 30 minutes of grueling hand-to-hand fighting, increasingly desperate Norman soldiers yelled their war cry of Dieu aide, assist us, God. As their verbal riposte, whenever the defenders managed to run through and throw back a particularly ambitious Norman soldier, Anglo-Saxon warriors would defiantly shout, "Out, out, out," to the invaders.
Wow.
Much like the missile attack before it, William's infantry charge began ingloriously fizzling out after around half an hour, and this left the Duke with only one option. At a signal, 2,000 of the most lethal heavy cavalry in Europe followed the banners and pennants of their lords up the slope in support of the infantry. Unfortunately for them, because the withering climb up the Senlac Ridge affected the horses bearing 250 pounds of rider and equipment, the Norman impact against Harold's shield wall was relatively gentle, already hindered by the harsh uphill slog, and kept out of Harold's tightly locked infantry formation. The situation for William's troops was made even worse by the sheer lethality of Anglo-Saxon arms. When a Norman soldier got too close, the shield wall would open for a moment, only for an Anglo-Saxon huscarl to burst forth and swing his two-handed axe at the unfortunate victim. It was reported that a single powerful swing of this fearsome implement could cut through both a horse and its armoured rider like a hot knife through butter. It wasn't too long before these stubborn tactics began having an impact. On his left, William's roughly handled Bretons simply...
I mean, like, I guess when you start a battle like that and you see that it's not working, I guess, I don't know, I guess commanders, they just don't want to, like, acknowledge that, man, it's probably not going to work out to my favor. Let's just back it. I guess, once they're committed, they're committed. They don't want to just leave, just in the beginning of a battle. But, man, when things aren't looking good for you and obviously not working out, man, maybe it's just time to retreat and live to fight another day, because right now, it's not looking so good for William right now, man.
On his left, William's roughly handled Bretons simply couldn't take any more punishment from the Anglo-Saxon huscarls. Peasant foot soldiers and noble horsemen alike turned from their English tormentors and began hastily bounding back down the slope in a headlong retreat. Disobeying their monarch's express orders to hold fast, triumphant Anglo-Saxon fieldmen on Harold's right pursued their adversaries down the Senlac slope, killing many fleeing enemy soldiers, but also rendering themselves vulnerable in the process. Nevertheless, the Breton flight exposed William's centre to an attack from its flank, and so the Normans too began pulling back uneasily. In a half-hearted measure to support his own undisciplined infantry, Harold's brothers Leofwine and Gurth led a general advance of the entire English line. It had some initial success, but then both magnates were killed and the attack petered out.
Damn.
With little to show for the deaths of two valuable leaders, the Anglo-Saxon main force did not push any further and left the onrushers to their fate. Understanding the incredible danger of this moment, William and his fellow commanders acted quickly and decisively. To quell a venomous rumour that the Duke had been killed in the fighting, William removed his nasal-guarded helmet without hesitation so that every one of his nearby soldiers could see him. The Bayeux tapestry even shows Eustace of Boulogne pointing to the Duke in what seems to be panic, trying desperately to show the troops their commander was alive. In the rear, William's half-brother, Bishop Odo, also managed to rally a good portion of the routed Norman left and turned them back to the battlefield. At the same time, the Duke of Normandy took several hundred elite knights from the centre and launched an attack against the disorganised fieldmen on near flat ground, perfect cavalry country. As Harold looked on unmoved but undoubtedly angered, William's heavily armoured horsemen crashed into and obliterated the disorderly English militiamen with ease.
Well, I guess I'm kind of being proven wrong here. Retreat and find another day, because I'm kind of even the tide right here, So okay, maybe underestimating William here, maybe because Harold's just sitting up there on at the peak here, and I thought maybe he might take advantage of this situation, I guess, but no.
This turnaround reversed the Normans' backward momentum, putting an end to a mid-battle crisis which could have heralded the end of William's entire venture. With this masterful display of mounted warfare, the first stage of the Battle of Hastings came to an end at about 2 p.m. After several hours, both sides had suffered considerable losses, resulting in a lull during which each army took a breather and readied themselves for further fighting. Harold could afford to draw the battle out, but William needed to win a decisive victory or he was finished.
Which obviously makes sense of why William, was on the offensive there. So okay, it's good on him because he had to do something. So he did it, and but it's not like he got destroyed though. It seemed like a pretty even battle. Like each side lost a pretty good amount of troops. So I guess that's one battle. I'm sure we're gonna get the follow up coming up here. I wonder if it's gonna be more of the same, where Harold's on the like the mountainside or whatever on top of the hill, and William goes up after him. So this would be cool to see.
Fortunately for the Normans, their leader had picked up on a weakness in Harold's army that he could use to gradually wear down the enemy ranks.
Yeah.
So, after a short break in the fighting, William ordered his whole line, cavalry and infantry both, forward for a second time in mid-afternoon. They had to get Harold off his ridge before nightfall, or all would be lost. A brutal melee once again developed across the entire front, but this time the Bretons were prepared. After a short while of heavy punishment, they once more turned and began to flee the field, but this time it was feigned at William's order. Although this is a controversial and much...
Okay, so William's obviously going to try and do the same tactics this time, but he didn't really plan this last time, but this time he's actually playing it. I guess he's going to pull his troops back, have the enemy follow them, and then kind of gobble them up from behind kind of thing, right? And if that happens here, Harold's troops apparently didn't really learn their lesson about kind of like, pushing forward and being like left out dry.
Although this is a controversial and much debated aspect of the Battle of Hastings, it is likely that the lesser trained Fieldmen and even some Huscarls were just waiting for the Bretons to run again. When some of the Bretons did as expected, the warriors they were facing gave chase. Their eagerness, however, was also to prove their downfall. Drawn out and vulnerable, the English contingents on that side of the field who fell for it were helpless when Breton cavalry quickly wheeled around, regrouped and charged. Scores of Anglo-Saxon troops were cut down in these small-scale tricks. This happened multiple times throughout the course of the afternoon. In the course of these constant feigned retreats, and throughout the front-line fighting atop Senlac Ridge, William's assaults had gradually thinned the ranks of Harold's better-trained and well-armoured Huscarls.
Wow.
Many of the local Saxon thanes who had accompanied their king to the battlefield.
So this happened many a times, apparently, throughout the whole afternoon. Like, they went to battle, kind of drew him out, then cut him down. They went to battle, drew him out, and wow, Harold's army just kept going for him. I guess they thought they finally had him on the run each time, and was like, yes, we got him. And no, it just didn't work out for him. Like, wow.
Many of the local Saxon thanes who had accompanied their king to the battlefield also lay dead on the field, their positions filled by Fieldmen who were far from their equal in warfare. For Duke William, it was now or never. He ordered the Norman archers forward to loose a short, sharp barrage of projectiles above the heads of their own soldiers and into the English ranks from a high trajectory. Whereas at the beginning of the battle, Harold's ranks had been fronted by well-trained and stoutly armoured professionals, Their Fieldman replacements were unable to shield themselves as effectively, and were killed in droves by Norman arrows. When the
Wow.
Norman cavalry led by William subsequently charged up the Senlac slope, this time it achieved a breakthrough, punching through a large section of the devastated Anglo-Saxon line. Suddenly noticing Harold fighting nearby, the Duke ordered Eustace of Boulogne to assault the enemy leader. During the confusion and shock of the assault, Harold was shot in the eye by an arrow and then cut to pieces by
What?
Norman knights.
Damn.
The king's death finally collapsed whatever remained of Anglo-Saxon morale. As the militiamen who remained alive began withdrawing towards the relative safety of Androsweald Forest, Norman cavalry were able to wrap around the English flank and roll up its remaining soldiers. Although the Fyrd fled for their lives, the remaining Huscarls, Thanes, and Harold's personal bodyguard gave their lives protecting the late king's body. Duke William's gamble of engaging the Godwinson army as soon as possible had paid dividends many times over. Anglo-Saxon strength was utterly shattered, but William, who could now appropriately be called the Conqueror, did not immediately advance to claim the English capital. Instead, he returned to the Norman camp at Hastings and stayed there for 5 days, awaiting the arrival of an Anglo-Saxon surrender delegation. None came. Throughout the subsequent months, William advanced north and devastated the countryside, whilst cautiously circling around London like a tiger sizing up its unknown prey.
Wow.
Although the Duke was wary of accepting the crown of England immediately because of the sheer amount of resistance that was still to be quelled, he was persuaded by defecting Anglo-Saxon magnates and his own army. After a 350-mile roundabout march from Hastings all the way to London, William accepted the crown of England at Westminster Cathedral on Christmas Day 1066. Thus, the Norman conquest ended the Anglo-Saxon era in England and the Viking Age in general, and started the Norman era. We have more videos on the history of England on the way, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button. Please
Dang. I don't know why they like pick up on that, the Norman area, because I've seen titles and videos within with the word Norman. So I don't know why I didn't pick up on that, because I really didn't expect William to win at the beginning of this video. I just thought it'd be an uprising that Harold would just squash. But then as they were battling, William is a pretty popular name in like England, isn't it? I mean, like Prince William, King William, or whatever. So that definitely makes sense. So I don't think I've heard like King Harold in like the history of Britain. So I don't know why that like a light bulb didn't like turn on in my head to think, oh yeah, William's definitely gonna win this thing. So duh. Good job, Paul. But wow, well, I'm pleasantly surprised though, because I like when there's battles and I don't really know what the outcome is, and I really didn't know the outcome. I expected Harold to win the beginning, but then when I was thinking about it, like halfway through when the armies got together, I was like, man, this can be anyone's game right here, and it's really cool to kind of see the battles and everything where you don't know who's gonna win, and you really have no side over it. Like we weren't really following either one. And it's been about the Vikings this series, so I didn't really have any loyalties to either side. So that was really cool video, really cool series. That's kind of awesome to kind of close it out that way. The outcome, you had the Vikings come over, and you had like smaller kingdoms, and it ended up being like one big kingdom. Scotland hasn't been conquered yet, or never gets conquered. And so you still have Ireland, history to go on over on that side, but with everything going down from the beginning, you basically got to see England get foreign, which is kind of really cool. And yeah, hope you guys liked this series. Hope you guys liked this video. I really appreciate you guys watching along with me. Always tons of fun doing these videos, and yeah, cool stuff right here. We got see the Vikings, and we've got this. Basically, there was the Vikings and England being made, being born. So that was really kind of awesome to see. So, anyways, guys, please hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't yet, and I'll catch you guys in future videos. Always a blast here, and yeah, peace. You guys have a great day. I'm out of here.